Stars. Welcome to getting your podcast up and off the ground, starting your podcast, walking through Libsyn, whatever you want to call it. We're here. I'm Dave Jackson. I'm the head of podcaster education here at Libsyn, and we're going to walk you through today getting your podcast up and going. But first, look, it's just in. And you know it's just in because it's on a Post-it note, and it's important because I wrote it in ink. November 7th, mark your calendar because that's going to be here sooner than you think. We're doing a YouTube live with Mario Armstrong, and it's all about advertising. So if you're thinking about getting a podcast going and making it work and growing that crowd, and then like, hey, let's monetize this thing, you want to go over to our YouTube channel. The link is right there. Look at it right there. And you want to go over. Not only do you want to subscribe, you want to smash the bell. That's it. I don't know why we're smashing the bell. Couldn't we just hit it or touch it? Nope. Smash the bell. That way you'll get notified when that comes on. And if you haven't been over to our YouTube channel lately, holy cow. Every time, if I take like a couple days off and go back, I'm like, wait, when did this happen? Amazing content over there, youtube.com/Libsyn. So along the way, first of all, the first thing we always have to answer, yes, this is being recorded. And over on the side, there is a chat window. If you have a question, be sure to put like a little Q there, so I know that's a question. There you go. And I will be happy to answer those. Now, I'll be checking those from time to time along the way, and I'll actually take a drink of something because my throat will start to go away. And so we'll take a little breather, see if there are any questions, and if everything's cool, we'll go, and then we'll move on. So that's the way we're going to work. So if you have any questions, please put those in there. And in some cases, I will answer them like, hey, we're in this section. Let's answer this question about this section now. And then we'll move on. But if I look at it and go, I'm going to answer that later, we'll do that. But we'll answer your questions. Just be sure to put that cue there. So where are we going today? Well, let me bring up my slideshow here. We're going to look at podcasting information, how to create an episode, promote your episode, and monitor your success. So we're going to get you inside Libsyn. One thing I should probably mention, when do you need Libsyn? And that's a question you're like, well, what do you mean? But there is a time I've seen people do this. So at Libsyn, not only do we want you to start podcasting, we want to keep you podcasting, and we want to make sure like we're on your team. We are go you, right? And so I see people from time to time, they will sign up for Libsyn and they don't have a podcast yet. So I just want to point this out. The best time to sign up for Libsyn, a media host, is when you have, you guessed it, media to host, because otherwise it's just sitting there burning up your money. We don't want to burn up your money. We want to earn your money. And so when you have that finished MP3 file and you're ready to go ahead and sign up for Libsyn. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you're ready, strap in, keep your arms and hands inside the ride at all time. And welcome to this fun-filled webinar. I'm really, really glad you are here. So first things first that we're going to talk about here. Tom Hanks, Garth Brooks, Meryl Streep, Jason Sudeikis, better known as Ted Lasso, Michelle Obama, Eddie Van Halen, and my producer is letting me know I forgot to click a button. So I'm going to take a pause for 2 seconds, proving that once again, it's the beauty of podcasting is the fact that if you do mess up, it's not radio. All right, so what we're going to do here is these people that I just talked about, Tom Hanks, Garth Brooks, Meryl Streep, Jason Sudeikis, Michelle Obama, Eddie Van Halen, Viola Davis, and Aquafina. Now, what do all those people have in common? And if you're like, okay, music, acting, guitar, no, they're all sufferers of imposter syndrome. Yep, Tom Hanks thinks he's a complete I've got everybody snowed. They're going to figure me out one day or not. But yeah, so if that's you, if you're thinking, would anybody listen to me? I'm here to tell you, yes, they would. They would. I'll give you a real quick example. I grew up around musicians, and I know who Pete Best is. And one time somebody said something, I'm like, oh, total Pete Best. And they're like, who's Pete Best? And I'm like, come on, everybody knows who Pete Best is. And they said, no, we don't. It's the original drummer for the Beatles before Ringo. And so I think that's common knowledge. So a lot of times when we think nobody will listen to me, you have a ton of knowledge that you think everybody knows, and they don't. So when you put out your podcast, they go, wow, this person really knows everything. So yes, people will listen to you. And the other thing, it's fairly common to have that nobody's going to listen to me kind of voice in our head, just like these famous people here. So let's talk a little bit about equipment. You don't have to spend $1,000,000 to sound like $1,000,000. The Samson Q2U is a really handy microphone. I got one sitting right here. Throw on a little clown nose for $5, and you're still under $100 for a great sounding microphone. It plugs right into your computer, so you don't have to be this total, geeky, nerdy person. You can just plug it right in. Or there's the Zoom PodTrack P4. This is another really handy tool. You can use it as a recorder. So if you want to interview somebody that's in the same room with you, if you want to record somebody that's on Zoom, you can do that. You can actually even tie it into your phone under $200. And 5 years ago, that was about $1,000. Now, if you have the money in the budget, this is the Focusrite Vocaster, super simple tool. What I love about this, you plug your microphone in, you hit a button and you talk, and it sets the level for you. So it's an interface. It's not a recorder, but if you just want to connect to your laptop so you can record into Audacity or something like that, it's a great tool. Then we get into things like the Rodecaster Pro. This is the granddaddy. It does have a little brother. I'm using one right now called the Rodecaster Duo. This is about $800, $700-800. It is it's not super cheap at all, but it almost does your laundry at this point. It does everything. In fact, everything the PodTrack P4 does for $200, this does, but it's a little more towards live streaming. It has some built-in effects and things like that. But again, do I need this $800 piece of equipment? No, you can start off with a $100 microphone and just, you start where you are and then you grow from there. I started in a basement in my brother's house next to the water heater and a furnace. So not the greatest recording area, but you start where you are. So we're going to play with Libsyn today and kind of get going through here. We're going to start off with how do I set up my show. So let me switch over here to our screen share. This is the dashboard. When you first log into Libsyn, now you might be able to guess this, but this is a test show. It says Dave's test show. So everything we're looking at today, we're just going to play. So when that slide said, hey, let's go play, we're going to go play. So you'll see where I'll kind of go through things, but I won't really finish it. It's because this is a test account. So this is our dashboard. And when you first log in, you'll see a quick snapshot of your stats. And then down here, any announcements that are going on from Libsyn, you can see those here on the right-hand side. You'll see your episodes over here on the left. So if you need to go back and finish one, that's there. Down here, you have your quick links for your feed and your website for your player. This is kind of handy. If you, let's say I'm using WordPress and I want to put my podcast on my website, it's super simple to just copy, paste. And then you're like, oh, but I need that player thing. I can come down here and I will grab, I'll say, I want this episode here to put on my website. So I'll just click on Get Code. And you can see there's multiple styles of players you can pick from. It could be really small or really big. You can pick your color, whichever, and if we get kind of geeky here, if you know your HTML number, you can put that in here. You'll see the players down here at the bottom. And I can pick, do I want to display the art or do I want to have follow buttons? Do I want them to download it? So you can really customize this to whatever you want. And then when you're ready, also this one little feature, this kind of comes in handy. Let's say you did an interview with somebody and their interview starts at 2 minutes and 12 seconds. I could come in here and say, all right, let's just have this. If somebody hits play, that it starts at the 2 minute and 12 second mark. I could click on apply and then come down here. When I'm ready to post this on WordPress, I just click on one button. It says, hey, I copied that to your clipboard. And now you could send that code to your guest and say, hey, just copy this and paste it onto your website, and that player would show up. So it's pretty handy. That's right there on the dashboard. There are a couple other different places you can do that, but since we're on the dashboard, I thought I would show that here. So just a nice way when you log in to get a quick snapshot of what's going on with my show. So speaking of your show, let's talk about how to set that up. Over in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little gear, and that's just your settings. So when I click on that, you'll see there are a bunch of things here that we can play with. And the first one we're going to play with is setting up your podcast. So this is under podcast. Now, when you make your show, I always say the best name, now, as always, This is always up to you. It's your show. You can do absolutely whatever you want. But I always say, if I can go up to somebody and say, I'm doing a show about blank, I'm doing a show called the Dave Jackson Power Hour. What do you think it's about? And somebody would go, well, who's Dave Jackson? Is it about electricity? For me, I like a name that's really obvious. So I had a friend of mine that was going to do a show called After the Darkness. And I said, okay, do that little test. And he said, I'm doing a show called After the Darkness. What do you think it's about? And people said, is that a band from the 90s, vampires, things like that? And I said, okay, does that match what your content is? He goes, no, it's my life after blindness. And I go, that's the name of your show, Life After Blindness. Got his keyword in there. So use that little experiment with friends as you're getting ready to launch. So here, obviously, it's a test show. It's called Dave's Test Show, but that's here. So the other thing to keep in with your name and your description and your artwork. My little bumper sticker for this is your podcast is a recipe. It's not a statue. So sometimes we really start to sweat because I'm trying to come up with the absolute perfect name. Well, if you aim it perfect and you miss, you're going to end on really, really good, right? You're just going to land on that. Well, you can always change it later. I know about every year or so, I'll come in and I'll look at my description and go, ugh, and change it again. So here's your name. Here's your description. Here's your artwork. Now, if you're like, I don't have artwork, we do integrate with Canva. Canva is free. They do have a paid version, but Canva is an amazing tool. It's kind of like Photoshop in the cloud. And so you can go in and they have pre-made templates and you just change the name and maybe upload your picture if you want, and it'll integrate right in here into Libsyn. And then down here, you'll see where we have category 1 and category 2. And when you click on these are the categories that are used by apps like Apple and Overcast and all these other ones. These are the Apple categories, for lack of a better phrase. And you'll see there are a ton in here, and you can scroll through, and eventually, depending on your show, you might come up with the kind of conclusion that, Dave, none of these match my show. In that case, pick the one that matches closest to your content. And again, you can always come back and change these later. So, and sometimes you'll see where there's two, you're like, really, I only have one that matches. Well, you can, again, just pick one that's kind of close, or you don't have to have two, but you do have to have one. So I've got those categories here. And then over on the right-hand side, if you want Libsyn to take your audio and convert it into video and post it to YouTube, we can do that, and then you would just upload a widescreen artwork. So here mine just says fake, but you could do that, and then when we post it, it'll automatically go to YouTube for you. Here, the owner name is just the host, so that's me, and if you didn't know that, that is the lovely and talented Elsie Escobar, head of our community. And then your owner email, the author is kind of the same as the author here, the owner and the author, and then your website. Now, if you have a website, and the goal of the podcast is to drive traffic to your website, you would want to put your website here. Now, Libsyn gives you a website for your podcast because let's say you're, Mrs. Tomlin's 6th grade class, right? Well, they don't want to have to go through the school board to get a website page. I just need some place for people to listen and follow the show. That's exactly what a Libsyn website is great for. It's super simple. You get to customize the colors. But if you have your own website, you would want to replace this because that's the default, it's the Libsyn site. You could change that here. And then if we go down a little further, you have release frequency. So here you have no set schedule. So that's the whenever I feel like it schedule. And then there's serial every 2 months, twice monthly. So you would pick whatever schedule you want, that fits you. And then move on. Now, if you don't have a schedule, then you would just say, I don't have a schedule. One piece of advice quickly is so many people say, I'm going to do a daily show and then try to fit it into their life. That usually doesn't work. What you want to do is look at your life and fit your schedule, the podcast schedule into it, not your life into your podcast. That usually goes a little backwards. Now here under third-party content, if you're like, third party, like what? Well, we have these little bubbles here. And anytime you see these next to a field and you're like, I have no idea what they're asking me for here, just click on that little bubble and you'll see it's letting you know if your show includes content created by someone else. You must have all the necessary rights to use the content in your podcast under the laws of each country or region. So what we're really talking about here primarily is music. So like I can't play AC/DC in my podcast. So I would not want to do that. But in some cases, there are music. Sometimes we call it pod safe, not Creative Commons. Oh, Brian, help me out. But there's another phrase for it here. It will come to me in about 5 seconds that you can use here. It will come to me. But anyway, if you have that kind of music, we'll just call it pod safe for now. There is that. Then your type of show, is it episodic, which just means you can listen to it whenever you want to listen to the 7th show, then the 20th show, and the 4th show. That's episodic. But what if I do kind of a story and I really want you to begin with episode 1? Then I would set that to serial. And so in some apps, it will show episode 1, then 2, then 3. Not all of them, but most of them, it will show that in serial. Under explicit, we have clean or not. And the question is, well, what depicts not clean? And if you're asking that question, the answer is you probably need explicit. There is no actual definition from Apple, but I always say just picture your, 3-year-old in the car. If you wouldn't play this show to a 3-year-old, then mark it explicit. I did once have somebody, there was a swear word, and they were saying, no, we're using it as a noun, not as a verb. And I'm like, nope, sorry, it's still not acceptable. What is your language? That one is fairly self-explanatory. And then episode limit, right now this is set to 0 by default. It's going to be set to 100. And this means how many episodes do you want going out to the different applications? And so the reason this was set to 0 is all of them. Because what happens is if you have that set to 100 and you put out episode 101, well, then the very first episode will go not away, doesn't get deleted. It's just not shown in the app to make room for episode 101. So I have it set to 0. Your copyright, you'd want to have the date, and then this could be your name. It could be the name of the show, whatever you want, but you could put that there. And then the feed locked is just a feature that makes it harder for people. Not that this happens a lot, but there are some people, especially if you get popular, that will take your feed, put it into, say, a free media host, and try to run ads on it and make money off your hard work. Well, that feed lock makes it much harder to do that. And again, that doesn't happen as much as it used to. And then with Libsyn is short for liberated syndication. And our goal is to help you be everywhere. And so we actually have our own little directory of podcasts. And so if you want to be listed in that, which why wouldn't you? You could click that. I guess maybe if you're doing a private show. But that's everything here. And remember, you can always come back and change this. Now, before you leave, since this is a web-based application, you always want to click on save before you leave the page. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And it says, hey, congratulations, we got your changes. So we're all good to go. So that was under settings. And then we went to podcast. Royalty-free, that's the phrase I knew. Royalty-free music is, if you have that, then you could say, I have music in it, third-party content, but I have the rights to it. I have some of that. So with that, I'm going to come back to the dashboard here. We're going to take a quick second and a quick sip to see if we have any questions yet. We have one here. Can I record straight into my computer, and how do I upload? I am so glad you asked that. There are a couple ways you can do that. A lot of people like to use software like Audacity because it's free. That's a great one. AudacityTeam.org, I believe, is the website for that. And then we're going to get into, just in this next section, how do I upload a file? In fact, you're going to watch me do one. So thank you, Sandra, for that question. I deeply appreciate it. We're not going to get into Audacity today, but if you go to YouTube, while you're there checking out the Libsyn channel, type in like Audacity tutorial. There are tons of Audacity tutorials because it's free. And who doesn't love free stuff? So that's great. So with that, let's go back now and we'll head back to Libsyn. And again, I saw some more questions. We'll answer all those towards the end. So when I'm ready to make a new episode, doesn't matter what page you're on, you can always go up to the upper right-hand corner and have new. So if I go new and I click on episode, this is where I could take the file that I uploaded or I recorded in Audacity, and I made myself sound super smart. Again, that's one of the beautiful things about podcasting. If I say something silly, I just edit it out. It's beautiful. And then if you want to guess, how do I upload? It's this big giant button at the top that says add media file. So if I click on this, I can come down here to downloads, and here's my folder. I've got a file there ready to go, and I click on upload. And so you'll see here where it's processing it, and it goes across the top. Now, for the record, when it gets to the end, it's going to disappear for about a half a second, and you're allowed to panic, but you don't need to, because it's just finishing up the processing. So you'll see here, and you're like, okay, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's great. Oh, wait to go. Oh, okay, we're good. So that's normal, but I'm just here to say when it disappears, you're good. So here, let you know, hey, the file is here. Perfect. So now I can come down, and your episode titles are really important, because think about that. First thing they're going to see is your artwork. Then they're going to see the title of your show. Then they're going to see that description. And your description is where you can put in, hey, here's what the show is about. And don't forget to add, here's how you're going to benefit. Because who doesn't want to benefit? And so not so much the background that, hey, Dave and Elsie met back in 2006. Nobody cares. But if I say, hey, on this show, we help you, let's say, polish your content so it has maximum impact for your audience, right? So I'm either going to make you laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. Explain that to people. So your title, though, so I saw your artwork, I saw your name, saw the description. The next thing I'm going to look at is your title. And if it says episode 16, it doesn't really make me want to click. Or maybe it just says Adam Grant. Well, if you don't know who Adam Grant is, again, doesn't make me click. But if I say Adam Grant explains how he made money selling used cardboard. Wait, what? I didn't know there was used cardboard. That makes me want to click. Something that says, I want to know more about that. Make your episode title that. Think of if this was a 1920s newspaper, right? Extra, extra, read all about it, right? Those people had, so-and-so, Steelers beat the 49ers. Holy cow. Okay, I want to click on that. So make your episode title. So I'm just going to put in here eye-catching title to get you to click. Not so much clickbait, because you want to deliver on the promise that is that episode. So over here, you have your episode type. Is it a normal, better known as full? Is it a trailer? Or is it a bonus episode? And then if you're using seasons, you could put that in there. And then your episode number. And so the great thing about this is when you put your episode number in here, you can ask the woman in your phone that rhymes with Mary and ask her to play the name of your show, episode blank, and most of the time she gets it right. It's that whole AI thing. They always get you about 80% there. Here we have explicit versus clean. Before we were talking about this on your show, now we're talking about it on the episode. Realize that if I mark one episode explicit, there are many countries, especially in the Middle East, that will block your entire show. So this is where if you have people that have dropped words that are, a little adult, you can go in and bleep those and still mark it clean, or just delete them if you want to. Now over here, this is your description. So this is where people are wondering, should I listen to this? And so this is where you want to put like a paragraph at least on here's what to expect in the show and here's how you're going to benefit. And if you're like some people that you kind of type like this, like one finger at a time, you're going to love this feature. It's called snippets. And you can see where I've made a bunch here. I'll make a new one. I'll say, hey, we've got, Thanksgiving, because it's coming up here in the States, giveaway. That's the name of it. And I say, sign up for the newsletter. Oh, typing in front of people is so much pressure. And potentially win big turkey. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. Now, realize this can have all sorts of stuff. So if I say, hey, I want to link this to the newsletter, I can make it bold, I can make italics, I can make bullet points and numbers. I could add a picture. I could click here if I wanted to make this a link. I could say, hey, let's link this to the newsletter at libsyn.com, et cetera, et cetera. I could put the title here for those that are impaired. I could have it open in a new window. All the stuff I just did, I only have to do it once, and then I can scroll down and click on save. And so now, just to go all the way out, if I click on done and I'm doing my, here is my awesome description that makes you want to click play. And then I'm like, oh, I got to do that thing about the turkey. I can click here on snippets and go Thanksgiving giveaway, bada bing. And I'm like, oh yeah, and I also want to mention She Podcast Live, bada bing. Oh wait, what about the thing? And then you'll see where there's, if you do enough of these, you'll end up with 2 pages. Follow the show, and never miss an episode. So it can make doing what a lot of people call show notes, your episode description, a piece of cake. Super simple. So you've got all those same tools here. You also have this little 3 dots. So if you're like, wait, where'd the thing for the picture go? It's all right there under the 3 dots. Here, tags, if you're like, tags, you're it. If I click on this, it explains these are really used, again, if you're having Libsyn convert your audio to a video. These are tags that are put into YouTube. And typically you pick your top, 5 or so and throw those in here. Here, this is a category. Now, this is not the category we saw in your show. This can be used for your player. So if, let's say, some of your shows were funny and some of your shows were serious, I could make a category. You'll see where I have a bunch in here. I could make one called funny, and then I could make another one called serious. And then when I go and I say, hey, give me one of those kind of jukebox looking players, I could say, just show me the funny stuff. And it would filter that out by that. So that's what this category is for. Here, the permalink points to, by default, this is typically the blog page. And when you see blog page, just that is actually your Libsyn page, that one that I mentioned for the 6th grade that's doing a podcast. Yeah, it's the Libsyn page. If you have your own website where, all the magic happens on your website, you've got the newsletter, you've got your consulting, your book, whatever it is that if you're selling things, then I want to go in here and say custom URL and put the full link to that episode on my website. And that way, when somebody's listening on their app, there'll be a little button that says, oh, website. And they click on it, it goes right to your website. Whereas here, it would go to the Libsyn page. So that's, again, depending on your why and the reasons you're starting a podcast, that can be really important. The author field is typically, again, whoever, your host and your co-host, those would be here. But what if we interviewed somebody and we interview Rob Walsh? Well, I could say, oh, I want to put Rob in here as well. Now, the author field is important because Apple doesn't search all of these fields. It only searches the title of the show, the title of the episodes, and the author field. Now, and you're like, wait, all the things we type in the description, at least for Apple, nope. Other apps do, but that's why the author tag is super important. What you don't want to do is start spamming this and putting in keywords that don't make any sense, because Apple will actually remove you when you do that. So if we go down a little further, here again, we've got episode artwork. That's your square one. So do you need to make artwork for every episode? You don't have to. Apple recently is going to start showing this artwork. They haven't for 20 years now, but if you want to, you could put that here. Some people will make a template and then just swap something out. That's kind of handy. That's what we do on the feed, which you'll see here a little later. And if you leave it blank, it'll just use your default artwork that we saw under your show. Now, if we come down here, again, we mentioned this wide image can be used for YouTube. So if you leave it blank, it'll use the one we just saw under our show settings. If I upload something here, it'll use it for the episode. And so we've got our description, we've got our artwork, we've got everything set. If we come down a little further, if you are eventually, right, you have a big enough crowd, we can actually help you find advertisers. And what's kind of handy is I can come in and say, oh, this is the spot where I said put an ad, and I could add a slot there. if we go down a little further, this is handy. If I want to go on vacation and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in Chicago next week, I'm not going to be around to publish, I could actually say, hey, publish this next week. And if you do that, you can see where we've set this to schedule. I think by default it's set to immediately publish, but you can click on this and say, nope. In fact, some people will schedule out weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. When you do this, you want the media set to based on release schedule, because there is an option for always available. Well, if I say, hey, schedule this mid-November, and this is set to always available, you'll see a little later there, when we get into stats, there's one column that says, what are your 7-day stats? Well, this is not coming out for like another 20 days-ish. So my 7-day stats are going to be 0 if I leave this set to always available, because it's kind of, this media availability is kind of, when are we starting your stats? Whereas if I say, hey, start my stats based on the release schedule, so then on the 15th of November, we'll start tracking your stats. And then ID3 tags are something that were much more important back in, say, 2006 and 7. Most apps now pull the information from your feed, from your Libsyn account, but there are some, and what an ID3 tags is, it takes all this author information and your title and some of your description, and it kind of smushes, I think that's the technical term, it smushes the information into your actual MP3 file. So I don't want to say they're not important, because there are still a few random apps that do that. So if you're like, I don't know what an ID3 tag is, then check that. If you do, and you've already done them, then you would uncheck them so that we don't mess up what you have. So here, I'm going to go ahead and just click on Save as Draft, because again, this is a test account. And when I go up to my episodes here, you'll see this in a second. It's saying, wait a minute, did I click on Save as Draft? Here we go. We got our success. There we go. Now, when I go up to something else, let's say I want to go back to my dashboard, we're all saved. And now if I go back to my episodes, you'll see I have a couple draft. I have some that are published. And I'm like, hey, I want to finish this. I could just come in here, click on Edit, come down to the bottom, pick my date, and click on Publish. And it would then be available for all the apps to see. So along with our support team. So if we go back to our dashboard, and I'm going to come back here and take a drink and check to see. Elsie says she loves the Vocaster. Me too. It's a great tool. And no new questions yet, so that's good. Thank you so much for that. Just always want to take a quick breather. If you have questions, don't hesitate to put that Q in front of that. And we're going to go back to here. And so I've made an episode. Now I want to promote it. And that's where you can come into social. Well, first of all, let me show you this. If we go to settings, this is where we set up our podcast. This is where I can set up our social. And this is just, you can see we've set up a Twitter, we set up a YouTube, super simple. And once those are set up, if I go back to social, I can come in here and say, all right, I want to make a post. And I could say, all right, which destination? I'm going to send this to Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it this week. I would like this to go out maybe tomorrow. So I could say, let's do that. I can pick a time up here. That's fine. And I could type in my message, yada, yada, yada. Down here, I can pick what episode am I promoting. So I'll say, how about this one? And then here, I can click and drag your image. And what's nice about this is in the past, you would kind of upload an image and maybe Twitter wants a different size than LinkedIn. And then Facebook wants a different size than that. We now show you, hey, here's the size image you want to use so it doesn't look squished, because that's what they would basically do. They would take your square image and it was supposed to be rectangle, so they'd stretch it and look all weird. So now you know what image you need to upload. And then where do you want to link this to? Do I want it to go to my podcast page? That's, again, the Libsyn page. The directory, we mentioned how we have a list of all of our shows. Or do I want to go custom URL? And again, if this is my own website, I would put that in there. And then when I'm done, I would just click on save. And what's nice about this is in the past, Libsyn would allow you to promote your show on social automatically kind of here once. Now you could set something to go every single day. Okay, today, Monday's Twitter, Tuesday's LinkedIn, Thursdays, whatever. And it's all right here under your social tab. And so we've done that. We've set up our show. We created an episode. Now we're promoting it. And people are like, hey, I can't find your show in Apple or Spotify. And you're like, oh, yeah, all right, I'm promoting it. And nobody can subscribe to it yet. So what you'd want to do, I realize I just did these out of order, is go to settings and go to destinations. Now, let me go back here for a quick second. And I'm going to go back to my slideshow because I want to show you slide number 10, because we're going to talk about submitting your show to Apple. And I don't know if you see, that's some really right is left is right. Here we go. This is the dashboard of Apple Podcasts. And what's great about that, you can see there how many people are following the show, how many subscribers, you can actually go in and be careful for what you ask for. I can go in and see how far people have listened. So I can see, wow, I put out this great show and my audience listened to 34% of it. Like, what about the other 66? So it's a really handy dashboard. And I say that because when we go into adding destinations, you don't want Libsyn to submit your show for you. So let me show you what this does. If I go here to destinations, you have a bunch of these that we've kind of already put in just so you can see what it looks like. But down at the bottom, there are anything that says feed, right? iHeartRadio, you may have heard of them. Odyssey is owned by CBS. Deezer is the Pandora of Europe. Ghana and JioSaavn are huge in India. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but there are a lot of people in India. And all those people love audio stuff. Player.fm, Samsung. So the next time you see a commercial with somebody folding their phone, yeah, your podcast could be on that phone. Boomplay is in Africa, and Reso is in Mexico. And so you want to add all these. It takes literally maybe 5 minutes to add them all. Just to show you, if I were to add, let's say Odyssey, I click on add, I scroll down, and you always want to bypass this overrides feature. It's a very, very unique feature that never gets used. So I'll just say for now, just always skip them. I would come down, I would click on approve. Of course, you want to read your terms of service, so I could click that link and read that. And then down here, I would just click on save. So it's literally, and then I could go back here to destinations. I could click on another one, and I could click on add, scroll, approve, save. Add, scroll, approve, save. And you're done in like 5 minutes. It's really that simple. Libsyn, again, is short for Liberated Syndication. And so we're helping you get your show all the way out there. It's almost Halloween. Think of a kid going out Halloween. He wants candy. And so if you say, all right, here comes little, Spider-Man Jr. standing next to you, and you're like, all right, buddy, any house that has lights on, they're going to give you candy. That kid doesn't go, all right, well, maybe this one. No, not that one. No, not that one. Because they want all the candy. So as a podcaster, you want downloads as much as a kid wants candy. So don't sit there and go, well, maybe Radio Public, but not Deezer, but no, list them all. So it's really super simple. Now, I mentioned the Apple Podcasts and Podcast Connect dashboard. So if I click here under Edit, you'll see here where if I go next, it gives me an option here of I want Libsyn to submit my show for me. You don't. And what happens is people see this and they're like, perfect. And they scroll past all these reasons as to why you don't want to do this. And they'll click on submit. So don't do that. What you want to do, and you can see here, you would do this if you don't have an Apple ID. So you're a kid. It would be a great example of that. If you want to submit your show to Apple Podcasts now, the RSS feed will be submitted via our app. So we don't own your show, but we control access to your stats. So you're giving away access to stats in Apple Podcasts, that slide I just showed you. So what you'd want to do here is say, no, I'll submit it myself. And then you just copy this feed, and we've got a link right here to take you where you basically copy and paste that into Apple, and you're good to go. And you could always go down here. We have a tutorial on that. So I just want to point that out, because what happens sometimes is people will do this, all right? They'll say, oh, go ahead and do that, Libsyn, and they'll just click on submit. So it's in there once, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And so they'll change this. They'll submit it again, and now your show's in Apple twice. So if you accidentally do this and you submit it, you let us submit it, just email support. We'll walk you through submitting it again. So you'll be in there twice temporarily, and then we can go in and remove the first one. So I just want to point that out. It's not a big deal, but Apple is the number one app for podcasts, and we just want to make sure that either way, you're like, nope, I don't really care about the stats thing. Well, then you can do the first one. But most people like those stats, especially because you can see how far people listen. So again, all these destinations you can get to by going to settings and destinations. And then all the ones at the bottom that say feed, you would just click on add. You only have to do that once. And from that point forward, when you make a new episode, it goes out and it syndicates to all those different apps. So we've set up our show. We've created an episode. We've submitted it to all the directories. We promoted it on social. And so now we want to know, is anybody listening? Well, before we do that, let's go back here. And we got some questions rolling in. Let's see. This one is, I'm a full-time podcast producer. I love Libsyn. Do you have any recommendations for me I might not know about and find useful? Well, snippets is one. Feeds, you would be amazed at how many people that say, I want to grow my show, and I go in and I see that they haven't submitted their show to all the feeds. So that's two that I think are kind of hidden feeds that are features. The other thing would be, of course, start a podcast to promote your service. Is it recommended that we add all of those streaming services? Yes. Again, picture yourself like a hungry kid on Halloween. So because here's the thing, it literally add, scroll, approve, save. So that took maybe 4 seconds. So if you get no downloads from that, say it's whatever, boom play, and app or people in Africa just don't care for your content, you're out 4 seconds. So yes, list them all. Absolutely. This is an interesting question. When do we get more exact stats available for as downloads and listen time? Listen time, without getting super geeky, you can get from Apple because they control the whole thing. That's the app. That's an app kind of feature. So Libsyn can't because you're listening on Overcast and Castro and Good Pods and all that. But we can give you downloads. We're IAB certified. That is the industry standard for stats, especially if you want to do advertising. And again, don't forget about our November 7th, if you're into advertising, with Mario Armstrong on our YouTube channel. But as far as exact stats, those are as exact as the industry can get, because there are a lot of bots in podcasting that we filter out, and that's what the IAB helps us do. The other thing you can't get, and this is a GDPR thing, and CCA in California, GDPR is in Europe. I can't get the person's name, age, anything else like that, where they live. You can get some of that information from Spotify. Spotify has podcasters in the same way that Apple had podcastsconnect.apple.com. There is a podcasters.spotify.com. You can log in there, just like we did in Apple, see how far people listened. You also get to see what your audience listens to. Like mine was like Ed Sheeran and like Slipknot. I'm like, that is a wide variety of audience right there. So you can get some demographic data on male, female, age range, things like that. Because when you sign up at Spotify, you have to give that information into them. So very good questions. Let's head back now. As speaking of stats, that is where we are headed. So I want to see, how did I do? So what I'm going to do here is switch to an actual show. And if you're not listening to the feed is Libsyn's official podcast. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to populate our dashboard here. So you can see here's our all-time downloads. Down here again, it's just our dashboard. So, but when you go to stats up here at the top, you'll get more than just this quick snapshot. So here, you'll see the numbers go up, and there's my all-time, how many I got this week, this month, the last 30 days, and this year. And so this gives you, again, just a quick idea. If you're an Excel nerd like I am, I can say that, you can download this report, and you'll see anytime you see this little down pointing arrow as we go down the stats page here, you can download that information and do some extra number crunching. So as we go here into last 5 episodes, this is a fun graph because I could say, hey, I don't really care about this. I really just want to measure like the first 7 days or first 30 days. I could turn off first 90. And you can see you can customize this to show what content you want and you don't want. If we scroll down a little further, here's your episode totals. And remember how I was talking about scheduling? And I said there's a first 7-day column. This is it. And so you can see here, what I love about this particular table is it's easy to tell, is my podcast growing or not? And so if I come down here, you can see we're finally getting some 90-day here. But if I go to page 2 or 3 or 4, I can kind of get a quick peek at, okay, what's working? Are my total numbers going down or up, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that little section. Now, you'll notice there's a line here that goes across the screen here. And the reason for this is you have the ability here to pick a date range. So if I said, hey, show me this year, I can do this and say, select those dates. And now it's going to take it a second, actually not that much, to make a daily, because I can go daily, weekly, or monthly. But here's what's fun about this. I love the daily graph because if I go, well, wait, this one's a little higher over here, and I can see this was on October 10th. And when I put my mouse over that little circle, see the circle is a little smaller. Then when I put over it, it gets a little bigger. When I click on that, it pops out this page and it shows me, okay, October 10th, they released an episode. So that's why they got that big download there. But you can also see that people are listening to your older content. So here's one from 2021. It got 1 play. So when you see how many downloads per day, that's of all your episodes, not just the one you released this day or this month. So I know the feed goes back a ways. I have episodes from 2005 that are still getting downloaded today. And so if you're kind of looking for a trend, I could say, show me weekly. I can say, show me monthly. And if you're like, I'm much more of a table person, you can click on view table. And that will then go down. If we scroll under here, your table will be here. And you can also zoom in and zoom out on these if you want. So really handy way to just, take an afternoon, get yourself some lunch, sit at your desk and just play with stats. They're a lot of fun. I always kind of joke how addicting they are because you're like, wait, I think I got another one. So there's that. If we scroll down a little further, this is just one column of downloads. So this is kind of handy if you want to see like, okay, how many downloads? You'll see where you get the little like we're number 1 finger. So if I say, how many downloads did we get here? Or if I go here, now realize that this is under that line. So this is the downloads for this year. So if you're like, wait a minute, I thought I got more than that, you would want to go up and set that date range to be, when you started. You'll notice over here, we have our little down pointing arrow again. So if you want to do some number crunching on that, there is that. If we scroll down a little further, here's again, downloads by episode, kind of the same thing we just saw up here. This one's just breaking it out by distinct listeners and downloads. Here, if I go to, and if you're like, what's the difference? Sometimes you'll see it's almost always, this is more, but you will have some people that'll listen to more than one podcast. So that's one distinct listener with 2 downloads. So that's why that stat's there. Here we have just the column where if you just want to sort by downloads. So here I can do this. And again, remember that's under that line. So you'd have to adjust the date, but that's there. You can also, if I go in here and click on this episode, you'll see where the screen looks identical, right? As we just saw, except these stats are only for that episode. So if you want to do a deep dive into stats, just scroll to the bottom, click on the episode, and now all the same exact graphs, everything like that, it's all here, except we're just looking for that one episode. So I'm back here. I click back on stats. Now I want to show you geographic data. So if you're like, I wonder where my audience is. So if I scroll down a little further, we were just here. And here is a map, which is kind of mind-boggling at times. You're like, wait, somebody in whatever stand is listening to my show? And you're like, yep. So here are all these. And again, if you have more than one page, you can click on next. You can also up here, you can download this information. But what's great is, let's say you're a comedian, you're going to go on tour in the United States. I could click on the US. It shows me my top states. But if you want to, there's a little button up here that says markets. And so if I want to start selling tickets, I know, okay, other. Now, why do we have other? Because in some cases, that's done by IP address. And sometimes people live in a place that's not close to enough to where that technology at least can identify it. But here you can see LA, New York, Baltimore, et cetera, et cetera. And so if I want to, like, how do I get back to the big map? I just click on home. But really handy. I've had people that have said they've booked, they've done kind of either they're going to do a live event. So they want to know where is my audience at. And that will help you do that. Down here, you have downloads per user agent. User agent is a fancy name for app. So you'll see here again, Apple Podcast is number one, Overcast, Chrome, Pocket Cast, Cast-O-Matic, Podcast Addict, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. Then here are the destinations. So all those ones we set up. So if you're like, I didn't even think, I've never heard of player.fm. Well, you got 10 downloads from them. And so granted, that's, next to nothing compared to the Libsyn Classic feed. That's the one that's used by Apple and Google. So your Libsyn Classic feed is always going to be the biggest one. And then you can see how many were Apple over here. So it's destinations and user agents. If we go a little further, if you have Libsyn submitting your show to YouTube, you can actually get those stats from YouTube here, which again, if you've never played on YouTube, can be soul crushing. When you can see the average view was 1:30, but I had 60 people view it. So that's there here in the bottom of your stats. So again, we got to all this by clicking on stats at the top. And I'll go back to my dashboard. So we started off, we went to settings. And first we went to podcast. We put in all our podcast information. We went to episode. Actually, you can just go here to new and create that new episode and upload it. And then we came down to destinations and we made sure we're listed in all of them. And it takes anywhere, like Apple and Spotify are almost 24 hours. They're really quick. And then the rest can be anywhere from, again, 24 hours to a week. Sometimes they take a little longer. You can promote it on social, and then you can come to stats to see, all right, what's working, what's not working, where is my audience, things of that nature. And then you can always come back to your dashboard. So that's our quick overview. Let's do some Q&A now. And so we have some more pinned messages. Thank you, team. How do I choose my weekly episode release date? Is there a science to that? There are two sciences to that. And in the end, as always, with every podcast question, this is a great question, Marta. Thank you for this. There are two schools of thought. Number one, in the end, it all revolves around you. So if the only day you can record is on Wednesday when your partner is watching the kids, guess what? You're going to publish on Wednesday. So there's that school of thought. Then the other one is, and this takes a little bit of work, is you could go to something like Apple Podcasts and see what are the top shows in your category. And then click on it and go, oh, that guy publishes on Tuesday. Check. Okay, that's Wednesday. Another one for Wednesday. Okay, that's 5 now on Wednesday. Okay, 1 on Friday. Nobody's publishing on Monday. That's really weird. And then you publish on the day that has the least amount of traffic. For me, I'm not sure that makes a huge difference. As always, you figure out what works for you. Because for me, one of the magics of podcasting, as we just saw when we clicked on the little bubble and that here's the downloads for the day, people listen to things from years ago. And so it is time shifted. So when I put this out today, it's not like it's radio and people are going to listen right now. They might, but they also might listen 2 weeks from now. So figure out what works for you. But in terms of science, I've heard people say, oh, find the least trafficked day and publish on that. And that's just a matter of going into, remember when we were doing an here, I'll just go to episodes, because you're like, wait, we did this one as, I'm in the feed. Hold on. Before I go changing stuff, Rob and Elsie would kill me. Dave, you deleted our whole podcast. At the very bottom, if you remember when we did that schedule. So if I go in here to our fake episodes, there we go. And at the bottom, you have the scheduling date. And so you could pick here and say, hey, I want this to go out on such and such. And I realize we're 4 minutes in here. I'm going to give you some bonus content. We normally don't talk about this, but if I go to settings and go to episode, I can come down here and say, I want my scheduled release for delay until the next day of the week. So if you always, I could say here, I release on Tuesday at 10 a.m. or Wednesday. And what's kind of neat about that, so here I'm going to say Monday at 2 a.m., which would be a really weird time, but I'll save that. And just for giggles, we'll go up and click on new episode. And when I scroll to the bottom, you're going to see where it's set for next, Tuesday. If I click on this and scroll up at 2 a.m. So that settings episode lets you set your defaults. So if you're always tired of saying, oh, it's, I always have to set custom URL or things like that, you can actually set those there as well. So great question. Thank you so much for that. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email support@libsyn.com, which leads me to one other slide I want to go to here. And that is, we do have that knowledge base. I showed that to you earlier. Just click on the I if you have any questions, or you can email support@libsyn.com. And here, I always want to point this out. If you're watching Netflix in the living room and it's working great, and you're like, oh, I love this comedian. And you're like, I'm going to finish this in the living room. And so you watch your living room. It takes all of about your bedroom. It takes all of about 6 seconds. You get in, you fire up Netflix, and it's just nothing but the spinning thing. And so the question is there a problem with Netflix? And the answer is no, there's not a problem with Netflix because we just watched it in the living room. And so you're like, so Dave, what does this have to do with podcasting? Well, let me explain it this way. If I publish an episode and it shows up and it's in Apple, but it's not in Spotify, is there a problem with Libsyn? No, because if there was a problem with Libsyn, just like there's a problem with Netflix, hey, it worked in the living room, so we know it's not Netflix. In this case, hey, it's working in Apple, so we know it's not a Libsyn problem. If there's a problem with Libsyn, your show wouldn't appear anywhere. So I just say that in mind, because sometimes when you click publish in Libsyn, what you're really saying is it's available to be, discovered by the apps. And that can take anywhere from 20 minutes to, worst case scenario, 24 hours. It's usually an hour or 3 to be found by the apps. So anyway, also, we do have coaching available for if you're interested and you want to do a deep dive, or if you want somebody just to, hey, I just want to talk to somebody. I'm tired of using chat or email or things like that. Just go to libsyncoaching.com and you will schedule some time with me. And we'll go over any concerns you have or what you're trying to do, things like that. So thanks so much for attending. I really do appreciate everybody being here. And I just want to make sure, yep, we got all of our questions taken care of. I appreciate it because I realize you're busy and we're here in the middle of the day and you're taking time to take your podcast to the next level. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email support@libsyn.com. Don't forget about our YouTube channel. And again, if you're interested in advertising, on November 7th, we're talking, it's a YouTube Live. So again, another place you can ask questions with Mario Armstrong, all about advertising. Just go to youtube.com/Libsyn, which is where you will find the recording of this as well. So thanks so much for everybody coming in. And if I don't see you sooner, I will see you next month. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Go podcasting.